I'll make it, I'll make it, I'll make it, I'll make it.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sunday, June 15th, 2025, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Champaign, Illinois. You are watching Co-op for Two. You're joining me for our Sunday play-by-mail session. We're in the middle of a Dear Holmes mystery called The Friendly Hand of Death. This will be letter number 2. We'll do a little bit of recap of our first letter before we get started. But let me check in with the chat, see how everyone's doing. I've got my other lens on the camera because I'm about to record some reviews for the channel, and it's a little, so it's throwing me off a little bit. It's a little focused too sharply on the background, and I'm not sure I have the brightness, the ISO set properly. YouTube says 11 viewers today. It's a small turnout, but that's just fine. I'm a little, my brain isn't fully functioning. I was up at 1 a.m. to do some coding on New York Noir, and so I've been up about 12 hours. We went on a bike ride. I took a half-hour nap. So I'm just, my sleep schedule goes off a little bit. So I'm like constantly in jet lag. I'm living life in a constant state of semi-jet lag. Sometimes that gives me a little bit of, sometimes that means I'm in a wide awake at 3 a.m. and sometimes it means my brain's not quite functioning. Let's talk about a couple things before we get started today. You might notice behind here is the new box for New York Noir that got delivered yesterday. I thought you might like to take a look at it. So you can see behind me on the shelf there is the old box. This is the new box, new name. Board Game Geek officially updated the name of New York Noir on the game page as well. You can see the side. And then here's this side. And here's the back. Back is what's really nice. And you'll notice now what you can't see. I posted on Board Game Geek a thread showing comparison to the old box. The old box was made, this is a fairly standard board game box size. It's like the Wingspan box, if you have Wingspan, with about normal thickness. The old box was considerably thicker. The idea was to hold all the core documents and also some case books, but it was an awkward size that was expensive to print, and wasn't quite going to do the job anyway, because if we do print a full campaign set of case booklets, it's going to be like more than double. So the choice was either a big, giant, awkward size box, or what I think we're looking at, which is going to be one box for the base components, which basically fit in here. So here's basically the core components here, and maybe one or two case booklets. And then if we manage to put together a full campaign set of cases, that would have to be in a separate box. I don't love the glossy. I got glossy. It doesn't really show up here. This is a better there. Now you can see how this box is glossy. The previous box is matte. I'd have to bring it out for you to really see it. But I think the matte is very matte. The glossy is very glossy. I think maybe something in between would be better. But okay, anyway, I just wanted to show you that. Last week we also played another Deadbolt Mystery Society box called The Watcher, which was pretty good. And I wrote up my little slides to catch up on my reviews. I've got like 10 reviews to record in the next couple days. All right, is there anything else to talk about before we get started? I've had a couple of people playtesting my latest case for New York Noir called Foxtrot East. The playtimes look like they're running anywhere from 10 to 15, 16 hours. It's a big, long case. Playtesters have been incredibly helpful in finding some issues, some small issues. It looks like the case works fairly well. If you're interested in trying it, playing it, you can now go download the PDF and play it. You should start with the demo case, though. Don't start with the 15-hour hard case. But it is ready for playing. And Anna is here in the chat. Anna has some cases that we're going to be playing quite soon. I think we just need to do another pass through to make sure I haven't broken anything in my latest coding. All right. Anything else to talk about? I've been watching a comedy on Netflix that is not going to be for everyone. It's absolutely not going to be for everyone. But it's called Tires, and it's with a comedian who's become famous recently. Maybe Shane Gillis, is that his name? Something like that. It's a little bit of the awkward cringe style comedy of The Office, but a little more politically incorrect. But it does have some, it's got there's a formula for working for these comedies that work for me. This one's figured it out. Okay. Has anyone watched Tires? Does anyone know what that is? Give it a try. It's not going to be for everyone. Melissa says, if you play on the tablet, can you download it and play offline? Yeah, it's just a PDF. It's just a PDF. If you download all the PDFs, you can play them offline. The only thing you can't do offline is use Peter's new search and map tools. It's a good question to raise with Peter if he couldn't make a version that is fully offline. But the case itself and all of the materials for New York Noir are just plain PDFs. You don't need to be online for those. All right. Let's take a look at the Friendly Hand of Death and where we left off. We actually got a very interesting, strange case. A very strange case on our hands here. Someone is killing people named Philip H. Nelson. The core of our first letter of our case was the death of this one particular Philip H. Nelson, Philip Hillcrest Nelson, who was found in the vault of the Skeleton Club, a notorious club in London. And his death is a kind of locked room mystery. According to witnesses, he left. The vault was empty. He should have left the club at 2 a.m. after playing poker. But when the concierge of the club opened it up at 11 a.m., there was his body asphyxiated, lack of oxygen. So the questions here that Watson is telling us we should be prepared to answer at the end of our 4 letters are: how did he end up dead in the strong room? What connection is there with these other Philip H. Nelsons? And why is someone trying to kill generically people named Philip H. Nelson? What did they do wrong? So let's see. Watson first tells us about a visitor that he had to 221B Baker Street, someone named Philip Herbert Nelson, who says he got delivered a message the other day that says by a working class guy who says, my employer's giving you the chance to make things square. You got to put things right by tomorrow night or you're going to pay. And this Philip Herbert Nelson said, I don't know what you're talking about. You must have the wrong guy. The guy leaves and then leaves a note on his door the next evening, saying, you're the one, all right, with a little bad grammar, suggesting, again, it might be a working class person who's threatening him. So that's that person. Then Watson hears that a different Philip H. Nelson is in trouble, this one found dead. And so the bulk of our letter concerned the details of how this Philip Nelson was found dead in the vault of the Skeleton Club. We hear about how they played poker. They played poker at 2 a.m. Here are the people playing poker. Philip Nelson is a chartered accountant. The one that got the strange message is a barrister clerk. We hear about the details of the last time this guy was seen alive. The concierge and another person closed up the vault at 3. It was empty. The concierge opens it up again at 11 and finds the body. Doesn't make sense. He shouldn't have a key. He shouldn't have a way to get in here unless someone is lying. It's a total mystery how he could have gotten back in this room. On his body, his hands are bruised up. He's got some matches that are burned out that look like maybe he used them to try to see in the dark. We're going to assume that it's airtight in here, but we don't know for sure. We may find out that later. We are told also that he was working on an audit of the Skeleton Club, this weird underground club. So there's something suspicious about this club already, but he finished a draft of the audit. It wasn't stolen. Nothing appears to have been stolen. Then we get a little bit of information about who has keys. Dual control combination lock. It's not 100% clear to us what that means. Maybe it means you need a combination and a key. Or maybe it means you could just use a combination. We're told who has the key, the guard has a key, the concierge has a key, and the owner of the place has a key. And then we have our third Philip H. Nelson. This is a guy who is just been interviewed because he's got the same name, and he says, a week ago, a weird thing happened. This is a third separate person with this name. A week ago, a weird thing happened. I was headed home. I saw a beggar that I hadn't seen before, a working man's accent. The guy here, this Philip Nelson, gives him a dime, and the man he gives it to says, you're lying about what you do. The beggar asked what he did and then said he was lying. And then the beggar says, I'm a bricklayer who broke my legs. And he really shocked this guy that he's talked to by how he was accusing him of lying. So the question is, are they all being accosted? Like the guy got the note left on his door and this guy being accosted by the beggar a week ago. It sure seems like someone has it out for people named Philip H. Nelson and they're getting their revenge. Is this guy telling the truth? Is this killer this beggar, and did he really break his legs? We don't know. I think Philip had the key to the dual lock safe. Well, I don't know what you mean. Are you trying to say you think we've misread something and we were told he had the key, or are you guessing he somehow had a key? We're told that this vault, that there are 3 copies. One, the watchman has it. The other 2 are in the possession of Capuchin, who's the concierge who opened and closed it. And the other one is Edward Presley. Now, it does say one is given to the guard. Now, the day guard comes on duty at 1 p.m., so he's gone. Is there a night guard? Which one is Bethany? Is Bethany the night guard? According to Bethany, which one is Bethany? The night watchman. So Stephen Bethany here is the guy who locks it up with him at 3 a.m. So Bethany has a key. But Bethany goes home at 3 a.m. So one consistent answer is that they're in on it, right? Like the only reason it's a locked room mystery, the locked room mystery is a sort of genre of these mystery games where you've got a dead person in a room and you have to figure out how could they have gotten in the room or how were they killed while they were in this locked room. But we don't even know if we believe it. It's possible, as long as you allow that Capuchin is lying, then they could have locked him in that room, killed him, and just said that it was empty and said that the body was found in the morning. That's the most likely answer, right? That doesn't require any convoluted stuff. It just requires that 2 men are lying. But you would have to have 2 men lying, really, because they both say that it was empty when they locked up at 3 a.m. And by 3 a.m., our victim should have been gone for 45 minutes by then. All right, well, we're going to find out more. It's not like we can solve it just from those 2 letters. All right, now, I do want to point out there is some weird misdating on this first letter. You can see the first letter says 28 September 1896, but then you can see the follow-up investigation here is dated 1889. And all of the other letters are 1889. So this seems wrong. This is really 1889. That's just a bug. All right, let's go read our second letter. Philip had the key to the lock safe. All right, this is where my complaints before about when you're hypothesizing something or when you're asserting that I've missed something is sort of important. All right, let's try to read this letter here. Who is writing us this letter? Hobart Floyd. Okay, so this is a letter from the investigator on this case of Division N, we're told. 1 October 1889, so just a few days after the previous letter. Dear Mr. Holmes, before I begin, Dr. Watson asks that I pass along his gratitude regarding your well wishes for Mrs. Watson and to assure you that he will write if there are any changes in her condition. Regarding the requests in your letter, I wasted no time in investigating Capuchin and Bethany as you asked. Both confirmed that any member wanting to enter the Skeleton Club's vault must apprise the watchman of the materials he plans to insert or retrieve from his deposit box before signing the register. The member must then entrust all his personal items with the watchman and consent to a search of his person upon exiting the vault to verify that the correct materials and none others have been removed. There are no exceptions to this rule. I asked Capuchin and Bethany why neither informed me about this policy on the 26th of September, and the concierge explained it did not occur to him because he had been unaware that Nelson had any belongings on his person at the time, and because Nelson obviously must have managed to enter the strong room after the club closed, only to have the door shut and locked behind him. Bethany concurred with all of this, but unlike the 26th of September, talking about the incident rattled rather than perplexed him. I know the vault was empty when we locked it, I'll swear to it, but not knowing what happened after that, it weighs on my conscience. I don't know why, but it does. Let me inject here what I have uncovered regarding this pair's relationship, which has been very little so far. They both retired from the 99th foot after Childer's reforms in 1881, and both have worked at the Skeleton Club since it opened in 1882. Bethany, who retired a corporal, is 53 years old and hearty, with a droop of the lid and slow, sleepy eyes. He has a Sussex accent and limps from a wound he received while rescuing Capuchin at the bottle of Glindenlow. Bethany is never married and lives at 34B Green Lanes, North London. As for Capuchin, his military record states that he behaved with courage and discipline and retired as sergeant major. Beyond that, the man is a mystery to the General Register Office and the Public Records Office, not to mention the members of the Skeleton Club. Capuchin appears to be about the same age as Bethany, but speaks with a formal accent and exhibits an excellent education. Tall, ramrod, straight, and hawk-faced, with weathered and mottled skin. He is slow and deliberate, and no one I have interviewed can recall Capuchin behaving with anything except absolute loyalty toward the club and its ownership. He appears to be the very model of the modern British major domo. But as an observer of mankind, I have little doubt that if need be, Capuchin has it in him to be unscrupulous, even dangerous. I also have little doubt that Bethany knows more about Capuchin's past than he is letting on. But all he will say about his former commander is that Capuchin recommended him for the position. When I couldn't find work because of the leg, Cap told me I should be a watchman. He helped me get the job and all. Returning to your requests, I asked Capuchin if his duties include serving as the Skeleton Club's accountant, since he prepares its daily deposit. He said yes. I then asked if Nelson had previously been hired to conduct any preliminary audits, and Capuchin confirmed Nelson had conducted the prior 3. I'm also enclosing another clipping from the Pall Mall Gazette. It, like the piece published on the 26th of September, was written by Thomas Bowling. He's the yarn chopper I accused of writing the Dear Boss letter and the Saucy Jack postcard last year. That's a Jack the Ripper reference. And he's exploiting this investigation to not only stir up newspaper sales, but also square that account. To substantiate the letter claim, I was the one who told Bowling that our search of Nelson's home resulted in nothing. yet he wrote what he did. Also encloses a copy of my interview with Harris Behan, which you may want to read now if you have not already. I shall be providing additional information about him later in this letter. Before that, though, know that I have received the commissioner's consent concerning Nelson's post-mortem examination. The PM was conducted at St. Leonard's Mortuary by Dr. James Riernston, but the details merely validate what was already apparent based upon where the body was found, the circumstances surrounding its discovery, and the presence of conjunctival petechial hemorrhaging, visceral congestion, and pulmonary edema. Nelson died from asphyxia, specifically suffocation. Rienertsen confirmed that the bruises on Nelson's hands are consistent with what he would expect to find on someone who died in a confined space. He also concluded that the presence of complete rigor mortis verifies that Nelson died approximately 8 to 24 hours before Capuchin discovered the body. In addition to this, a specialist was sent by Hobbs Hart to examine the strong room. Michael McClure of 32 Bricklayer Arms, Southwark, who was recalled from Dublin for this task. With the company's good name on the line, Hobbs Hart insisted on dispatching its best engineer. Because of this delay, constables were posted in the club's basement to prohibit entry to the vault, an inconvenience that did not sit well with Capuchin or the club's members. But the wait was worth it. McClure knows his locks. After examining each inch of the strong room and the structuring above and around it, McClure is convinced the vault's shell was not breached. He is, however, flummoxed as to how Nelson ended up inside the vault. I can't imagine he intended to lock himself inside, and even if the door would manage to swing closed by itself, well, the locks shouldn't have engaged. That requires turning at least one combination dial. And even if, say, Nelson did turn a dial without thinking and the door did swing shut and the locks did engage, well, if he cracked the locks to enter the vault, it should have been twice as simple for him to escape. I suspect you will appreciate that reasoning, Mr. Holmes, just as I suspect you will be pleased to learn that I found a note with his belongings, just as you had speculated. I am grateful for your suggestions. As requested, I carefully examined Nelson's belongings anew. Sure enough, I discovered a false bottom to the man's cigarette case. And when I pried it loose, I found a small ledger pad and a folded piece of ledger page that had been roughly torn off the pad. I say roughly because a good portion of the top right corner of the page remained as a remnant. This page appears to be the one Nelson was making notes on during the game, because carefully written on the obverse side of the remnant was a series of numbers and words in 2 columns. MC, ME. 200 pounds, 17 pauses 11, and under ME, 200 pounds, 10 plus, 11 plus, stairs, 14 plus. Boy, that's a bit of a mystery, huh? But then it continues. In the same careful handwriting, on the obverse side of the torn page was HXB 8 plus. What is this craziness? Blinks, shakes. So all of the, this feels like, are these 2 rows, are these 2 columns here meant to continue down? Because it seems like each column is like the MC column, the ME column, the HX column, the B column all follow this pattern of starting with an amount In fact, it's always 200 pounds. And then eventually gets to a word here. Pauses, stares, blinks, shakes. These two columns don't quite fit. How interesting. On the reverse side was the following list of numbers. All 400s. Also written in the right corner beneath this list were the words penworm. I hope these words mean something to you, Mr. Holmes, because no one in the yard recognizes them. If it is a name or alias, we've located no record for it. And let me add that the writing on the reverse side is far less neat than on the obverse, as if Mr. Nelson were in a hurry or holding the paper in his palm when he scribbled. Very interesting. I'm not sure I understand this whole obverse, how many pieces of paper and what they are. We can go back and look at that later. I do not play cards nor gamble and am ignorant of the rituals of accounting. So on discovering this, I consulted Chief Inspector James McPherson with the City of London Police. You may recall McPherson is the man who encouraged me to join the detective police force. But I went to him because he is more adept with finances and spreading the broads than any detective at 26 Old Jewry. He studied both sides of the folded page for nearly a minute and determined Mr. Nelson was certainly an experienced card player. McPherson pointed to the obverse notes. He not only recorded his wins and losses, but those of his opponents, along with their tells. I see. These are going to be initials of the other poker players. That's me, and this is probably Capuchin, and all right, so these are different people. All right, let me not interrupt my reading. Let's go. Let's continue on. He's recording. He not only recorded his wins and losses, but those of his opponents, along with their tells. Noting a look of confusion upon me, he said things that would make a suspect's guilt obvious during an interrogation. Fidgeting, averting a glance, and so on. Nelson was keeping track of these details to figure out when one of his opponents was bluffing. Based on Hux's winnings, though, Nelson seems to have gotten his tell wrong. Doesn't surprise me. Hux is as quiet as he's clever. Asked if he was familiar with Bram Hux. Oh, somewhat, came his answer. He's always out fly fishing. He had a Van Dyke beard, long as I can remember. Worked his way up from scarecrow to drainage contractor to owner of his own modular dwelling company, but his history isn't what got him blackballed by the proper St. James clubs. That's his 5% philanthropy. Chief noted confusion in me again. You know what an MDC is? I hazarded. They build houses for working class folk, right? He nodded. More importantly, for Hux, they offer competitive returns to their investors. That's generally between 2 and 3%. Hux guarantees a 5% annual return. That's a better yield than you'd get from government bonds or consols. McPherson turned over the folded page and tapped the list of numbers. As for these, my guess is they're partial stock certificate numbers, though I've no idea why Nelson would have recorded those. McPherson turned the page back over. Anyway, it's these wins and losses that pester me. Why didn't Behan and McTurk cut their losses sooner than they did? They're pretty well fixed, so I doubt either one suffered any hardship, but it seems strange considering the enmity between them and Hux. McTurk and Hux get along all right, I suppose, but 2 years ago, McTurk defaulted on a 1,000-pound surety that Behan's bank issued to McTurk and Company. Behan retaliated by accusing McTurk of founding his business with stolen South African diamonds provided by the Palms Frites criminal organization. asked McPherson if there was any truth to this. And he responded, not according to Fleet Street. The newspapers dismissed it as an unfounded rumor. But do you know who runs the Palms Frites? I shook my head. Well, reputedly, it's the same person who owns the Skeleton Club, Edward B. Wesley, supposed saint and founder of the League for the Aid of the Dispossessed Poor. Well, co-founder anyways with McTurk. McPherson lowered his voice, and Wesley is the boss. No doubt. Pinkerton confirmed that for us last year when it shared its Palms Frites file with the Foreign Office as part of the negotiations for the Blaine Possefort extradition treaty. Since then, the commissioner has sequestered the file in his office. You should ask to read it since you're heading this case. Besides putting the Newgate calendar to shame, it strongly alludes that McTurk has been Wesley's confidential business partner and general manager, going back to their misspent youth in New York. I questioned, if that's true, why didn't Pinkerton nick the pair when they were still in America? Well, because illusions is all the Pinkerton has on McTurk, and by the time they had actual evidence against Wesley, he had established himself as a reverend member of West End society, so the Americans can't touch him and we daren't. Not unless we have absolute proof of any charges. Delightful, I muttered. All right, so what's going on between Behan and Hux? McPherson sighed. Well, Behan is using his influence with Liberal MPs to have Hux's new site in William Court investigated. Behan's convinced Hux is bribing some Tories into voting in favor of moving Streatham from Surrey to the more prosperous County of London. Hux, meanwhile, has accused Behan's son, Armitage, of embezzling £1,000 from the bank to fund his affair with an Alhambra theater actress. Honestly, it's hard to fathom why this lot sat down together for a friendly hand of poker. This elicited a short laugh. Then I asked about Nelson himself. None of the players held anything against him, to my knowledge, but Nelson does hire himself out to less than reputable clients. Perhaps there's something there. Well, we know he was working for Wesley. McPherson wagged a finger. All we know is that Nelson was performing a preliminary audit for a club that Wesley is suspected of owning. Thinking of one of our other Nelsons, Philip Herbert, I wondered aloud, well, for the sake of argument, what if Nelson uncovered something during that audit that got him in Dutch with Wesley? Something that Nelson had to put back the way it should be by last Wednesday night. And the chief interrupted me. But Philip Herbert Nelson received the warning, not Hillcrest Nelson. I countered, yes, but do you recall that warning was for Philip H. Nelson? I wonder if Wesley knew which Philip H. Nelson had been hired. There's several around, after all. His eyes grew wide, and he suggested I review the club's membership roll to see how Nelson is listed. I agreed to do so and to bring McPherson the club's monetary records and Nelson's audit report for review. That's where we left things. The club's half-year audit is scheduled for tomorrow, so I have submitted an affidavit for a warrant to postpone the audit and permit me to view the membership roll and collect the records the chief requested. The magistrate should decide on that tomorrow morning. I will write you regarding any details that follow. Boy, a lot of facts going on in this case. All right, now wrapping up the letter, here are a couple extra things that Floyd has sent along. My friend, here I will copy for you two documents, both relevant to our efforts. You may have read the central news piece. If that is the case, apologies for the redundancy. However, my interview with Bian you will certainly find interesting. Pall Mall Gazette, 30 September 1889. The Skeleton Club corpse. Investigation continues into death at notorious club from the Central News Agency. It has been 4 days since the body of Skeleton Club member Philip Nelson was discovered in that establishment's strong room last Thursday, yet the investigation remains enveloped in a complete mystery, leaving the public to suppose that the police are no nearer to an explanation than they were last week. Herbert Inspector H. Floyd, the young detective in charge of the Scotland Yard investigation, states that he is satisfied that the best efforts are being brought to bear upon the matter, but he is alone in his satisfaction. The post-mortem examination was performed on the 26th of September, but details remain unavailable, as do the results of a search of Mr. Nelson's Knoll Park home, conducted on the 29th of September. It may be that fortitude is not enough for this particular challenge, and it might be prudent of Scotland Yard to assign this case to a more experienced investigator. Okay, and here's an interview with Harris Behan on 29 September. I interviewed Harris Behan on the afternoon of the 28th of September. Behan is the owner of a private bank, J.J. Behan & Co., and I spoke with him at his office in the branch at the corner of Cheapside and Friday Streets. The bank has a second branch on Fleet Street. Behan states, and Capuchin corroborated, that he dines and then plays billiards and cards at the Skeleton Club nearly every Wednesday and Thursday. And when he arrived on the 25th of September around 6 p.m., the attendance register documents it was 6:04. He was approached by Capuchin about the poker game within 20 minutes. He notes that he intended to meet with an acquaintance, Joseph T. Page, but Capuchin managed to coax him into joining the poker game. Dr. Page and I met at the club nearly every week. We talked mostly about a series of detective novels he fancies, though he does enjoy teaching me about illusionry, as he calls it. Nothing to be concerned about, just card tricks, sleight of hand, all that. We both have impressively large families, and he served in the military just as my brother did, so we get along quite well. It was a shame to cut our meeting short. Behan, like McTurk and Hux, agrees that their game was amicable, and after it started, the only person to enter or leave the tower room was the game's steward, Capuchin, who checked in every half hour. During the night, each player stood up from the table on at least a few occasions to stretch their legs or employ the chamber's lavatory. Near the top of every hour, Nelson stood to scribble notes on a small pad of paper. Around 10 p.m., Behan asked what it was that Nelson was jotting down, and Nelson told him he was keeping track of his wins and losses. Beyond this, the night proceeded as documented in my report of the 26th of September. Wow, okay, lot going on here. Let's put it in our book, and I want to hear what the audience has noticed, and if anything. So, well, let me file these here, and then we will discuss and highlight any clues. But boy, there's a lot of facts for this case for us to chew on. All right. No one is got anything to say yet. All right, let me just look through here. So the letter starts out talking about two people that Holmes has asked for background on, Capuchin and Bethany. That's the concierge, who was the last person to lock up the vault, and the guard that was with him. So these two that locked up the vault at 3 a.m. and say it was empty, and then Capuchin, who opened it at 11, these two are actually pretty tight. We get a first mention that you would have had, the rules are you have to sign in the register before you can get into the vault, and you get searched to make sure you're not walking out with anything. But then we told that they're both served in the military about the same time. There's some mention here about one saved the other's life. He's clearly rattled by the death. No, they all agree about what had happened. They both retired from the 99th Foot, the footman, this is like some footman's brigade or something. And then they've worked at the Skeleton Club ever since. And we're told that Capuchin got him his job. 1882. So they've been working there 7 years. A wound he received while rescuing Capuchin. So Capuchin, who's the concierge, was rescued by the other one. One is like a working class, and one is Capuchin, well educated. And we get a little comment here about how Capuchin could be dangerous. Like, everyone says he's honorable, but he's working at this sort of underground club, and our detective thinks, you know, if push came to shove, he could do some bad things. And then we hear that Capuchin is actually the accountant. That's significant, because if the dead guy was doing the audit and Capuchin is skimming money off the top, that would be a motive to kill the person doing the audit. All right, so there's a motive. Could he have discovered something? They search the house. They don't find anything. They're still waiting from the, oh no, they're not waiting for the coroner's report. Here's the summary of the coroner's report. Okay, he definitely died from asphyxia. No doubt about that. But no comment here about whether the room is airtight. In fact, it kind of sounds to me like a little bit of a suggestion that maybe he didn't die in the room. Like, there's no signs that he was trying to get out of that room. He's just curled up on his side in that room. I feel like they're saying the bruises are someone in a confined space. It's like his bruises on his palms, on his side of his fingers. I feel like they've locked him in like a coffin, and he's died. And then they've just dumped his body in here. And then we get a timeline, 8 to 24 hours before found. Now, that's a bit of an interesting thing here, because they say the last time they saw him was 2 a.m. and they opened the room at 11 a.m. So there's really only a 9-hour window that he's missing. So he would have had to have been killed right away. Right? Because it couldn't have been less than 8 hours. That means he was seen at 2. There's only like a 1-hour window before someone must have killed him. And then they examine the strong room. They say it doesn't make any sense that he could have locked himself in there. So that's all consistent with what we think. Like, he didn't accidentally lock himself in there. He says he would have been able to get out. All right. And then we're told that he's got a note hidden in in the cigarette case. All right. Now we get told about the nature of these folded pages. Let's see if we can understand this a little bit better. There's a ledger pad and a folded piece of ledger page that had been torn off the pad. So he's got a pad, and then one of the pages was torn off, and a piece of that is still on the pad. So you know it came from that pad. And he was making notes on it. We know from the first letter that he's got a pencil with him, with his body. Okay, he's making notes during the game because carefully written on the obverse side of the remnant. That's confusing me a little bit. Like it's a remnant of ledger and then the obverse side of the remnant. That just sounds like, does that just mean the opposite side of the piece of paper? I guess we're gonna, yeah, that's really confusing the way this is written. This says these are written on the obverse sides of the remnant and in 2 columns. And then this says on the obverse side of the torn page. Like, what is that trying to say? What does that mean? Does it mean, are they talking about 2 pieces of paper? The top right corner of the page remained as a remnant. So it seems like they're talking about a torn page and a remnant that's still attached to the ledger. So like there's a pad of paper, there's a paper on top, it's been torn off. So we've got some writing on the torn off paper and some writing on the paper that's still attached to the pad. Now, so we've got MC and then ME, then HXB. So are those the initials of all the poker players? That's the question. So here's HX could be Huck. Harris Behan could be B. Then we've got Felix McTurk could be the MC. And then ME would be him. But that doesn't make sense that ME would be him because he wouldn't write that his clue is that he stares, right? So what does that mean? Right? Like our guy suggests that he's making notes about each player's tells. Like this player's tell is that he pauses. When he pauses, he's trying to be deceitful. But why would he? This can't be him. He wouldn't be writing that he stares. And then I'm not sure how to read this. Like how are these 2 columns? Are these supposed to be continuing down? That's the part that I'm a little confused about. In fact, I'll tell you what I think. I think this is a little bit of a... I don't know if this is on purpose, but I think these 2 columns are continuing from here. Like, I think this is like this. I'll tell you why. Look at the 4 columns. You can see that each one is long and ends with whether they're up or down money. So in other words, It looks to me that he's saying Hucks started, they all started with 200 pounds. 200 pounds, 200 pounds, 200 pounds, 200 pounds. And then here's a complete column. He started with 200 pounds. He won 11, he won 12, he won 15. He lost 8, he won 14, he won 23, he won 6. He's up 73 total. Right? Does that add up right? 29, 39, 43, 35, 50, 62, 73. Yes. Okay. So here in the hands they played, started at 200, he's up 73. B, this guy B, started at 200 and he's down 45. And then that's why this is going to be a continuation of this. Started with 200, lost 17, lost 11. So he's down 28. Now he's down 20. Now he's down 13. Now he's down 32, 30, 55. Yes, close enough. And then this guy, ME, started out at 200 pounds and ended up positive 99 pounds. So here's the biggest winner of the group. Okay, so that confirms what these two columns are. They are continuations of these two columns. And that's, I guess, the idea of this obverse. If we got these documents, it would be a little clearer, but okay. I still am confused about if ME is myself, why he would be writing down that he stares as a tell. And then we get these numbers, and our guy, our expert, has a theory about what those are. Let me check in with the chat first a little bit. What if they aren't tells, but signals they give each other? That's interesting. You'd still have to... I still don't understand what the ME is. What is Capuchin's full name? We're only ever given his last name. No, surely we're given his full name somewhere. By the club's concierge, Laurent Capuchin. All right, let's remember that in case it's important. Laurent Capuchin is LC. Okay. So well, let's go back. Let's keep recapping before we try to figure out new information. So we understand mostly what these columns are. They're tracking for each of the... There are 4 people playing poker, we think. Including this guy himself who's taking notes, and he's keeping track of who won how much when. Okay, then we get these other partial numbers and the words penworm. Also written in the right corner beneath this list were the words penworm. And no one knows what that means. Does anyone recognize this? What does this mean? Penworm. Is it an anagram? Is it something we don't know? I don't know. He doesn't know either. Okay, so then then the expert offers his opinion about some of this stuff. The guy studies it and he says, yeah, he's keeping track of winning and losing. He says Nelson must have been an experienced card player, that he's keeping track of all this stuff and he's recording their tells. Okay. And then he says, based on Huck's winning, though, he must have figured him out wrong. Doesn't surprise me. Okay. Then we get a little more information about Bram Hux. And he says he works at he owns a modular dwelling company, but he's been kicked out of the proper clubs like everyone else. Is 5% philanthropy. What does that mean? He guarantees some higher return. I don't really understand that. But then he tells us what those 400 numbers are. He says partial stock certificate numbers. So I have no idea why he would have recorded those. So he's writing on ledger paper, but why is he right? Like, did these get recorded at two different times? And then these are stock certificate numbers, but why? Is that part of his audit? Was recording these? Has he found something untoward in the audit that he's writing down? Wins and losses that pester me. Why didn't Behan and McTurk cut their losses sooner than they did? He's saying that these guys were losing money. Why didn't they stop playing? I don't know. That doesn't seem odd to me. People start losing money, they want to keep playing. I don't know why he's thinking that it's odd that they kept playing. It's not like they played for that long anyway. And then he says it's also odd that these two are playing together because they're sort of have some trouble in the past. And the trouble might have to do with this criminal organization. Something feels a little off about this poker game to me. And then there's a discussion about this criminal gang that was involved in this story. It's none other than owned by the club owner, Edward Wesley, who we haven't met yet, but we've heard about. Founder of the League of the Aid of Dispossessed Poor with McTurk. Then we hear about these two were involved in some criminal activity, that they weren't arrested. I mean, these two are real enemies. Behan and Huxley. He's having people investigate him. Surely they wouldn't sit down for a game of cards if one person's investigating the other. Hux, meanwhile, is accused Behan's son of embezzling £1,000 from the bank to fund his affair with an actress. Why? He can't fathom why this lot sat down together for a friendly hand of poker. Yeah, something has gone wrong here. They haven't sat down for a friendly hand of poker. I don't believe it. There's something more nefarious going on with this hand of poker. And then our guy hypothesized, what if he found something out with the audit? and that was going to get him in trouble. And then this other expert says, yeah, that doesn't make sense, though, because why would these other Philip Nelsons be getting accosted? And then our guy, Foyt, seems to be suggesting maybe Wesley, the owner of this club, didn't know the full name of the person auditing him. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay, then we hear about the paper article. It doesn't seem very relevant. Then the interview with Behan. One of the other members, this is a person who I think might have been out of town in the original. Like, you look at all the people who played poker, I think one of them couldn't be breached for a statement originally. Anyway, here is his statement here. He says they play billiards and cards every Wednesday and Thursday. When he arrived on the 25th of September at 6 p.m., Capuchin approaches him about the poker game. He planned to meet someone else, but this guy coaxed him into joining the poker game. He's going to meet some guy to talk about sleight of hand stuff. It was a shame to cut our meeting short. Then why did you do it? Why did this guy join this poker game that he doesn't really want to join? But everyone says that the game was fine, that they did play it, and only the game steward, which is Capuchin, checked in every half hour. They all stretch. Looks like they're playing some sort of more. They're playing some card game that's got more to it. And then he says, hey, yeah, that's what Nelson was doing, was writing down losses and wins. Everything consistent with what he says. Boy, that's strange, huh? Were they playing some poker game where the loser dies? But how would that even explain any of this? All right, let's see what the chat says, because I have no good idea. I think the person wanting. Okay. Do we know for sure that they were playing poker? We definitely don't, but everyone says they were playing poker. Like, you'd have to have 5 people lying about it. Something is very fishy about this poker game, though. But were they playing some game where the loser dies? Well, that doesn't really solve any of our details about why they're after Philip H. Nelson. Are we told at any point about who was winning and losing? I'd like to lock in this MC and ME part. Like, why does he have a column with his own hell? That's really throwing me. Okay, so wait, we can confirm something specific here. The game concluded at 2, at which time Capuchin approved Nelson's request to store his winnings, 99 pounds. Okay, so Nelson won 99 pounds. So can we at least confirm that is the ME column? Yes, we can. ME ended the game with 99 pounds in winnings. So this is his column. ME is him. And then the other initials make sense. McTurk, Hux, and BM all have their own columns. Now, the other thing to pay attention to is we get an interview with BM, Hux, and McTurk. We talk to them. Like, here's Behan. So we should be looking for his tell. Does he shake when he's being interviewed? Meaning he would be lying. And somewhere we get told that some of Nelson's writing looks like it was done secretly. Like here, we're told that when they got up to stretch, he was writing. Near the top of every hour, Nelson stood to scribble. Okay, so this is the scribbling in plain sight that he's not trying to hide. Where are we told about the writing that looks like it was being hidden? Here. Okay. The writing on the reverse side is less neat than on the obverse, as if Nelson were in a hurry or holding the paper in his palms while he scribbled, or in the dark, maybe. Okay. So we don't know what penworm here. Written in the right corner beneath this list were the words penworm. The writing on the reverse side is far less neat. Where is the reverse side writing? Where is the reverse side writing? Here we've got the obverse side of the remnant and the obverse side of the torn page. On the reverse side was the following list of numbers. Okay. So these numbers are being written secretly. And he thinks they're stock certificate numbers. So between hands of poker, when they all stand up, he's writing this stuff very calmly. But somehow he's also writing these numbers secretly. Arsene says the other thing I don't get is the last tally. It can't be right. They don't sum up to zero. More money was won than lost. Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Like four players. This player lost 53. This player lost 45. Somehow these guys have gained 73 and 99. That doesn't add up. Yes, I wonder if that means there was another player. But why wouldn't he be tracking that other player? That is weird, though. That is weird. Why are these people playing poker together? They're enemies. Difference might be the score for the note taker. He didn't record his own scores. No, that doesn't make sense. Because we know that ME is Nelson. That's his 99-pound winning of the night that he asked to store in the vault. Those Now there could be another player that's he's not tallying, but it can't be himself because ME is himself. Why he's writing stairs down, I don't know. Why he's writing his own tell, but maybe he's just trying to remind himself of his tell. And also McTurk pauses is his tell, and Hux blinks, and Behan shakes. So we should look at the interview with McTurk and see if any of them display their tell. Bethany Behan was gone, was on travel. That's why he's been interviewed in this letter. But the others did talk on the first night. They're fetched to provide their accounts. Bethany seemed perplexed. The others were not told anything about what they said. That's weird. So let me propose a possibility here, though. What if this group has conspired to kill Philip Nelson? What if this group has conspired to kill him? They really do it in this way? Like, what if they've gotten him? What if they've gotten him in here, killed him, left his body in here? Why would this be the, seems like an odd place to put someone. But what if all these men are part of some group that have decided to kill him? If it's if it's true that he didn't asphyxiate calmly in this room, but was killed in a coffin or something and dropped here, then how would you explain the matches? Four burnt matches likely spent for illumination, or are the four burnt matches from the four other men hanging out in this room smoking a cigarette while this guy dies? So weird. Or I guess they lock him in here to die. Um, all right, what's going on here with the club proprietor, Edward Presley, has a key, the club proprietor. But then they're talking about the owner is Wesley. owner of the club is Edward B. Wesley, who's different from the proprietor. And we have this whole gang. McTurk has been Wesley's confidential business manager. Nelson does hire himself out to less than reputable clients. So you could imagine that Nelson is robbing, has got a scheme to say he's going to do the audits, but he's really planning to rob this group. And they've caught him and killed him. Maybe he was stealing money while he was auditing them. He's been auditing them for many years now, 3 years. Maybe they figured out that he's robbing them, and they've conspired to kill him. And maybe this information about these stock certificates is how he's robbing them. While he's doing the audit, he's writing down partial stock certificate numbers for some purpose. Is it possible that this is the old thing where they're planning to kill this guy Nelson right from the start? Imagine you want to kill some guy and you want to disguise the motive, so you sort of pretend that you're after other people with the same name so that the police think it's some crazy person after someone just because of their name. Uh all right, the chat has spun out of control about the winnings of the poker game. All right, we're going to end this here after an hour and a half. It seems clear to me we don't have quite enough, but I'd like to hear your theories. You can stop by the Discord if you've got some theories about what's going on here, especially about what this pen worm is, these stock certificates, or if you want to spiral out of control like some in the chat about these winnings from the poker game, you're welcome to do that. For the rest of you, I'll see you next time.